Magic Treehouse number 8, Midnight on the Moon. Chapter 4, Moon Rabbits. "Oh, wow," said Annie. She took a step forward, but Jack stood frozen. He wanted to get a good look at everything first. He stared at the ground. He was standing in a layer of gray dust as fine as powder. Footprints were everywhere. Jack wondered who had made them. He reached into his pack for the moon book. To his surprise, it was as light as a feather. He found a picture of footprints on the moon. He read, "The moon has no rain or wind to blow the dust around, so footprints will never wear away naturally, not even in 1 billion years." "Oh, man," Jack said. The moon was the stillest place he had ever been. It was as still as a picture, and its stillness would never, ever end. Jack stared at the ink-black sky. A lovely blue and white ball glowed far away. Earth. For the first time, it really hit Jack. They were in outer space. "Look!" Annie cried, laughing. She bounded past Jack, almost flying through the air. She landed on her feet, then she jumped again. "I'm a moon rabbit," she called. Jack laughed. How did she do that, he wondered. He turned the page and read, "A person weighs less on the moon because of the moon's low gravity and lack of air. If you weigh 60 pounds on Earth, you would only weigh 10 pounds on the moon." "Don't just stand there reading," said Annie, grabbing the book from Jack's gloved hand, and she tossed it into space. It flew far away. Jack started after it. He bounded up and down. Boing, boing, boing. Now he felt as light as a feather. "Look," he called to Annie. "I'm a moon rabbit, too." Where Jack's boots hit the ground, moon dust gracefully sprayed into space. The book had landed at the edge of a shallow creek, a crater. When Jack reached it, he tried to stop, but his feet slipped. He fell right over and lay on his side. He tried to stand, but he was off balance. He tried again, but the dust was just too deep, and his spacesuit was too clumsy. "You okay?" asked Annie. "I can't get up," said Jack. "You shouldn't have been goofing off," said Annie wisely. "You goofed off first," said Jack. "Now help me up, please." Annie started toward him. "Don't fall too," warned Jack. "I won't." Annie moved very slowly. She half floated, half walked. "Give me your hand," she said. Annie grabbed Jack's hand, and she pressed her boot against his and pulled him up. "Thanks," he said. "No problem," she said. "It was easy. You were very light." "Thank goodness," said Jack. "It's impossible to get up alone." He picked up the moon book, and it was covered with dust. He brushed it off. "Oh, wow, look," said Annie. She stood at the edge of the crater. "What is it?" said Jack. "A moon buggy," said Annie. The buggy was parked in the crater. It had 4 huge wheels. "Let's go for a ride," said Annie. "We can't," said Jack. "We just have 2 hours of air in our tanks, remember? I bet we'll find the thing faster if we take the moon buggy." Annie bounded into the crater. "But we can't drive," said Jack. "I bet I can drive this," said Annie. "It looks easy. Come on." She jumped into the driver's seat. "But you don't have a license," said Jack. "Who cares?" said Annie. "There aren't any roads on the moon, or stoplights, or policemen either." She was right, Jack thought. "Well, go slow," he said, and he climbed in beside her. Annie pushed a button labeled "on." The moon buggy lurched backward. "Yikes!" said Annie. "Step on the brake," said Jack. Annie pressed the pedal on the floor, and the buggy stopped with a jerk. "Whew," she said. "It must have been in reverse," said Jack. "Let me study this." But before he could study anything, Annie pushed another button. The buggy tilted back. Its front wheels started to rise in the air. "Let me out of here," said Jack. Annie pushed more buttons. The buggy's front wheels landed back on the ground, and the buggy leaped forward. "Slower," said Jack. "I can't," said Annie. "I don't know how." Annie steered the buggy over the tracks on the ground. The wide wheels kept it from sinking into the deep dust. "Careful," said Jack. The buggy zoomed out of the crater. Gray clouds of dust rose behind them as they took off across the moon. Chapter 5. Hang on. Annie drove the moon buggy over bumps and hollows. It bucked like a bronco. I'm going through there, she pointed to an opening between two mountains. Jack held on to the dashboard. The buggy bumped toward the opening and shot through. On the other side, the ground was even rockier. Look for the fourth M thing, said Annie, bouncing up and down. Jack groaned. Looking for anything on this wild ride was impossible. Slow down, he said. How? Try pressing the brake pedal on the floor. Slowly. Annie pressed on the brake. The buggy slowed down. Jack sighed with relief. The ride was still bumpy, but now at least he could take a good look at the moon. He had never been to such a colorless, barren place. There was no green, no blue, no red, no water, no trees, no clouds, only giant gray rocks and craters, and an American flag. Oh man, said Jack. That's from the first astronauts who landed on the moon. And look, a telescope, said Annie. She drove near the flag and telescope. Then she put her foot on the brake until the buggy stopped. She pressed a button that said off. Then she and Jack hopped out. They took slow, giant steps to the side of the first moon landing. Beside the flag was a sign. Annie read it aloud. Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind. That's a good message, said Jack. He handed the moon book to Annie. Then he took out his notebook and pencil to copy the sign. Let's leave our own message, said Annie. What would we say, said Jack. The same thing, said Annie, but say we were the first kids. Jack turned to a new page in his notebook. In big letters he wrote their message. Now we have to sign it, said Annie. Jack signed his name. Then he passed the notebook and pencil to Annie. She signed her name and passed the notebook back. Jack tore out a piece of paper and he put it by the flag. Today, the first kids from the planet Earth came to the moon. We came in peace for all children. Jack, Annie. No wind would ever blow the message away. No rain would ever fall on it. It would be there forever unless someone moved it. Thinking of forever made Jack feel dizzy. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. Then he remembered the time. He had 2 hours passed yet. I wish I had a watch, he said, standing up. We might be running out of time. Oh, wow. A moon man, said Annie. What? Jack turned to look at her. She was staring through the telescope. Jack walked over to the telescope. Annie stepped aside so he could look too. Jack gasped. In the distance, something was flying over the ground. It looked like a giant man in a spacesuit. Chapter 6. High Jump. Who is that? Said Jack. I don't know, said Annie, but we'll soon find out. Let's see if you got that picture I didn't show you. Sorry. And she started waving. No, said Jack. He grabbed her arm. Let's go back to the base before he gets here. Why? Said Annie. We don't know who he is, said Jack. We don't know if he's friendly or mean or what. But we can't go back, said Annie. We haven't found the fourth M thing yet. We won't be able to go home. It doesn't matter. We can lock the door at the moon base until he goes away, said Jack. Then we can get new air tanks. Jack hurried to the moon buggy. Come on, he jumped into the driver's seat. Annie gave a little wave to the dot in the sky. Then she climbed into the moon buggy. The buggy took off. Careful, said Annie. They bumped over the rocks as Jack turned the buggy around. Then they zoomed toward the pass. Jack steered around craters and rocks. More than once the buggy nearly tipped over. Whoa, slow down, said Annie. They were almost at the mountain pass. Suddenly, a cloud of dust flew up in front of them. The ground trembled. Watch it, cried Annie. Jack couldn't see a thing. He stepped on the brake, and the buggy jerked to a stop. The dust settled. A giant rock had fallen into the narrow pass. It was stuck between the two walls of rock, and they were trapped. Jack quickly found a picture of a giant rock in the moon book. He read out loud, Rocks of all sizes crash into the moon from outer space. These rocks are called meteorites. We're lucky that meteorite didn't land on us, said Jack. Yeah, I guess it's too big to be the M thing, said Annie. She had climbed out of the moon buggy and was standing on a meteorite. It was more than twice as tall as she was. Jack looked at the black sky. The flying thing was nowhere in sight yet. We'll have to jump over it, Annie said. Jump? I don't think so, said Jack. It's too high. I'm going to try anyway, said Annie. Wait, let's think first, said Jack. But Annie was already backing up. 1, 2, 3, go, she shouted, and took a giant leaping steps toward the meteorite. When Annie got close to the rock, she pushed off the ground. She flew through space and disappeared behind the meteorite. Annie, Jack called. There was no answer. Oh, brother, said Jack. He backed up and took off toward the rock. He jumped as high as he could, then he was flying through space. Jack hit the ground and fell face down into the dust. Jack tried to stand, but his suit was too bulky. He tried to roll over, but his suit made even that impossible. Oh no, he groaned, not again. Are you here? Asked Annie. Did you make it? Yes, Jack was relieved to hear her voice, but he couldn't turn his head to see her. He could only hear her over the radio. Can you help me up? He asked. Nope, said Annie. Why not? I fell down too, she said. Oh, brother, Jack sighed. Now we are really in trouble. He tried to stand again and failed. Can you see anything? He asked. Just the sky, said Annie. Wow. Is it weird? I'm worried about our air tank, said Jack. I feel like it's been 2 hours. Jack, said Annie. And what about the moon man? Said Jack. Where did he go to? Jack, whispered Annie. What? He's here, she said. The moon man is here. What? He's standing above me.